I mean, it's funny, people text me or email me photos of garbage all the time, which I think might be rude for other people. For me, it's flattering. It just means they're walking by garbage and thinking, well, they're thinking about it, and then they're thinking about me and that I got them to think about it. Every time someone sees an artwork or an image, even if it's online or in person, you're just like planting these seeds, and then hopefully they grow and people will think about them later or stop and consider things that they would have normally just walked by. I got this amazing donation of all these plants. They were gonna be thrown out actually, and this is the kind of stuff that happens to me where people say, oh, call Stowe, he'll probably take them. And it's true, when someone says, we have a couple $1,000s worth of plants, can we bring them over? You say, yeah, bring them over. My name is Stowe Len, and I'm an artist, investigator, dreamer, explorer. I've never necessarily collaborated with plants. It's so fun for me. I mean, it's also a great counterpoint to a lot of the work that I was doing with waste and trash. Before this, I did a residency on a landfill in Kyrgyzstan. When it comes to the climate crisis, there's different jobs that need to be done. There's people trying to change policies. There's people in government. There's people on the streets, on the front lines. And then there's art too, and I think that's like a valid lane to take because we need images. We need visuals to communicate what's happening in the world. That happens to be what I'm obsessed with, is like, how do you create an image that's beautiful but is talking about some real stuff? Some fresh spinach from my crisper. Recently, I was asked to do an exhibition at the Queen's Botanical Garden. I went to visit, and they have a cool little gallery, but what was most interesting to me was the garden itself. I basically asked them if I could have a residence in the garden, which they hadn't necessarily considered, but were game. So this process, what's fun is that I had no idea this existed, and I just walked into the education department and they were teaching a class on plant pigment, and they were taking any kind of plant and grinding it up. I'm gonna add some alcohol to it. And the alcohol helps to extract the pigment. And so this class they were teaching, it's based on a process called the anthotype, which is an early photographic process that used only plants to create the emulsion. They basically made, like a photogram in the shape of a leaf. What I had thought about was, what if I took a transparency of an image and put that out in the sun? This is the good stuff right here. And now we have this pretty awesome green ink. For my show at the Queen's Botanical Garden, it's all prints made with this process. I look to art to kind of be, in a way, my guiding light as a person who sort of felt a little bit outside of everything, I grew up, I'm half Vietnamese, right? So I grew up as a mixed person in America, and you sort of never really feel like you fit in anywhere. Around 2015, I started to really feel a disconnection with Vietnam. My family had all moved during the war or after the war, and we're basically uninterested in going. I booked a solo trip. The first thing I wanted to do was get on the water. I went out on the Saigon River. What was really emotionally intense was how polluted the water was when I got there. I kind of processed the world through creating, so I immediately wanted to make work about what I was witnessing. I've always loved printmaking. I'm really a terrible printmaker because I'm not perfect. I'm really messy. I can't do the same thing over and over. When I discovered printmaking with water, it sort of blew my mind. It's like it just knocked down the walls of my studio. All of a sudden, I could be on a boat making art. I could be in the water making art. I could just be out in the world and creating work there.
The boat is a small boat, so I have really good access to the water, but it's tight quarters and it's precarious. I have a big, wet, toxic piece of paper blowing in the wind, I'm trying not to have it like slap in my face. I'm trying not to fall in the river. The whole thing is a bit of a dance.
I started to think more and more about the waterways around me. Living in New York City, with the proximity to all these waterways that we can't swim in, that we can't fish in, it starts to get to you. I remember just hanging out on a hot summer day, like wanting to go swimming so bad, but you really can't go swimming in the East River, and why?
So we're at the Newtown Creek. This is a 3.5-mile tributary. If you go this way about 2.5 miles, you'll hit the East River.
This is like right in my backyard, but what is that place? Like, what really happened there? There's so many amazing, sordid, industrial histories of the New York City waterways. I knew that the water, it looked like an oil spill sometimes, especially after heavy rainfall.
This print in particular is from the Newtown Creek. If you were to sort of test this, you'd probably find sewage. You'd probably find different types of forever chemicals and other types of things that wind up in our waterways.
But the creek it's a special place.
When I look at other water bodies and other abused landscapes, I look for the beauty and I look for some sort of way to reclaim it while bringing attention to what we've done to it.
I like to dive into a place, embed and soak up what's happening, talk to people, learn, listen, and then respond with some kind of artwork or activation. I've basically been in residence somewhere for like the last 6 years. Being a New Yorker now for a few decades, New York's sanitation department is such an essential aspect of life here. When there was an open call to be an artist in residence, I really jumped at the chance. This is the world's largest sanitation department. You've got 10,000 employees. They're dealing with 12,000 tons of garbage a day. It's a lot to wrap your head around, but I spent probably the first 6 months just shadowing employees, going to garages, riding on the trucks, visited the incinerator in Newark, New Jersey that we use. And then along the way, I found a silk screen studio full of designs from the sanitation department.
These are my own remixes of these older poster campaigns. And what was fun for me was to show not only the public, but the workers themselves. I got to reintroduce the workers to these old designs.
When you're doing the job, there's little time to reflect. And it was in that moment where I kind of realized, as an artist in residence, I could reflect for the department itself, but also for the public. And then while I was there, someone told me about this TV studio in the sanitation department. They were just like, yeah, you like old stuff. And I went and checked it out, and it was like full of hundreds of films and videos.
Singing a song of sanitation, take it away.
So I began to digitize, I think I digitized like 500 hours of footage. The oldest going back to 1903 and going basically 1903 to 2003. And the footage is amazing. You see the history of New York City through the lens of garbage. Even the ecological conscious of the public changes over decades. So much of New York is built on garbage. At the Queens Botanical Garden, that is in Flushing Meadows, Corona Park, was all landfill. Even if you go back to the Great Gatsby, F. Scott Fitzgerald talks about it as the Valley of Ashes. That was all a big ash dump. It's just fascinating to me to go to these types of sites and think about what they were.
We're here in the greenhouse at Queens Botanical Garden, and this has kind of been my makeshift studio. It's been the dark room, or the light room, as it were, which is where I can develop these images. It's like taking them out of the oven. So this is an image from the original
Queens Botanical Garden, which was an exhibit at the World's Fair in 1939. Let it cook a little more. Gardens are very radical. I mean, these are like activist spaces. There's volunteer-run composting. There's people learning how to grow food. There's people using outdoor space to do things and kind of come together. This piece is called Worms Do It Better, Don't Cut Compost. It's in response to the unfortunate budget cuts in New York City, which cut all funding to composting. One of the things that I started doing was looking through the archives. I love doing that because usually archives in a space are locked away, no one's really thinking about them, and it's a time where I can really pull the history out. I love kind of finding these sort of images in the archive that, when taken out of context are super bizarre. It sort of encapsulates what I want to do with these prints, which is pull from the past, pull that into the present, and honor the legacy of this place, but also honor the work that it takes to create a place like a garden or to create a community space. It's all kind of connected, I think. The garden and working in the sanitation department, I think that through line, it makes a lot of sense for me as someone who's just kind of been interested in the decay of society and wanting to make something with that. All of that is super important, I think, to my work, and I think to a whole new generation of artists, honestly, who are responding to the world and responding to the urgent things happening in the world. All that stuff, it ends up soaking into who you are and what you do and finds its way coming out in the artwork in different ways. I'm like a big sponge and just squeeze me out occasionally, and then there you go. There's some new art.
I grew up pretty much surrounded by the woods, and that meant surrounded by all the animals, from the raccoons to the possums to the chipmunks to the rabbits to the birds. My parents always said the red cardinals had me tamed because they'd come to the door and start singing, and out I would go to feed them. And I think I've always loved nature, animals, because of that. My art is always trying to ground you in what might be right outside your front door that is invisible to you. For instance, I will take a river that is flowing right underneath the city, but then I'll look at it in terms of an ecological history, and I'll also look at it in terms of a holistic approach, because we tend to understand a river with where we live on that river. We rarely think about what's downstream from us, but we might possibly worry about what's upstream from us if someone's polluting. So I will always try to make in my artworks visible what we take for granted. My choice of materials is always natural, whether it's stone, wood, glass, and then of course my big earthworks are all made out of the earth itself, and a lot of times my works try to reclaim a degraded or neglected landscape. The wave fields, I tend to work in series as an artist, and the first one was for the University of Michigan. I am very site-specific, but a site isn't just a physical site, so I started doing all this research because the building that artwork was going into was an aerospace engineering building. And one of the faculty members had handed me this book on, it was called Van Dyck's Album of Fluid Motion, and I came across this Stokes water wave, which is a naturally occurring, completely symmetrical, repetitive water wave. And I went, that's gonna be the piece. So in the first one, you could curl up in a wave. They were 5 feet tall. By the time I get to Storm King Wave Field, I wanted you to get lost in almost an ocean wave. So those waves go 18 to 20 feet above your head. So I do tend to play with scale and just how one relates to the landscape, to the natural world, through these what I would call interventions. In my life, I've done the art and the architecture. I sort of see my career as a bit of a tripod, and the third would be the memorials. So first with Vietnam, then Civil Rights Memorial in Montgomery, Alabama, the Women's Table at Yale, and then the Confluence Project, which is a 6-part series throughout the state of Washington. I've always thought of my works as being anti-monuments. They're actually very private, very personal, very intimate. So they're memorials. I call them memory works, actually. And so for me, well, what if a memorial could jump form? What if it could flow like water? It could go to multiple sites and multiple media forms. About 20 years ago, I started making clippings of the 6th extinction. We're in an extinction event, and we're causing it to happen. Since I have cared deeply about the environment and in a way wanted to really give back something, I decided that my 5th and final of the memorial series would be focused on the environment. What is Missing is sort of a guerrilla art project. One of its major aspects is an online website, but it's also an NGO. It's a not-for-profit foundation that I donate to. It tries to make us aware of what we're losing and said, you come away with your own conclusions. We give you very concrete actions of what you can do in your own lives, what we eat, what we drink, what we buy, what we throw away, what we recycle, as well as what can an artist do. Maybe I can pose the issues we face in a different light so that maybe you think that's all it would take. I think a lot of people think there's nothing they can individually do that can make a difference with climate change, because it is all of us doing a little bit here and a little bit there. So we'll show you like an image of the world at night and go, if the entire world population, if we lived at the density of Manhattan, how much space do we take up? And the answer is the state of New Mexico. So by framing it differently, all maybe I can do as an artist is to get you to go, that's it? That's the amount of space? But our impact affects 99% of the planet. If it stays abstract, how do you get people to connect to nature? So I always believe nature is incredibly wondrous. So we've gone around the world and we've found anecdotal accounts. Let's take New York City, for example. You know, when the early explorers first came through, they encountered 40-pound turkeys. They encountered 6-foot-long lobsters. Just these stories of wonder. So we chose to live where there was very great biodiversity. First comes sewage, then comes industrial pollution, and then that awareness leads to legislation, which leads to recovery. So there's an arc throughout all these timelines. We must have like 500 timelines of cities, species, waterways, where you see this amazing wonder, and then literally the Thames hasn't been this clean in 400 years. New York City, the seals are back. Oysters are beginning to be coming back. So if we protect nature, nature's resilient, it will come back. And we like to emphasize that. The bookending between Vietnam and What is Missing is, in a funny way, when I started out with the Vietnam Memorial, if you think about the form itself, I didn't add a heavy wall into the earth. I cut the earth, opened it up, and polished it. The object of this monument, or what I call an anti-monument, are the names themselves. It's that pure surface. And that dematerialization of what a monument could be follows through to What is Missing, that continues to grow and continues to ask people to share a memory with us. Something they've personally witnessed or something their parents or grandparents told them has either diminished or disappeared, or better yet, come back. How is nature personally connecting to you? And I think to be able to connect into that and make it close to home, again, pulls away from the abstractness of protecting the world, protecting the planet. It brings it right back to your own backyard. That's all I can do as an artist, frame a new way of looking at the problems we face. Art at times has been a predictor. It's like science fiction. I think we wrote about an escalator, we wrote about an elevator, we wrote about a rocket to the moon. And I think we're very resourceful as a species. And so if we show you plausible future scenarios, we can aim for it.
I've always been fascinated by the sea. I feel like the sea is full of secrets. When a coral reef is really healthy, it's like a bustling city. Times Square reminds me of a coral reef because there are so many different people. There's lights going off, there's horns honking. A coral reef has all those different players. There's giant sharks and tiny little snapping shrimp and little corals that are quietly sculpting these giant skyscrapers. I think of a degraded coral reef as a city that's gone bankrupt. It has a ghost town feel. I'm Courtney Madison. I'm a ceramic sculptor and an ocean advocate based in San Francisco. We're in my studio. I am surrounded by jars of tentacles that I've made out of porcelain that are ready for my next project, and I have some work in progress. A lot of times I want to create monuments to coral reefs. I want to celebrate them in as big a way as possible to get people's attention and get them to care about protecting them. I really hope that I'm not creating memorials to coral reefs. A lot of times I feel like I might be, but I hope that's not true. I loved exploring tide pools as a kid. My mom would take me to the piers of San Francisco, and I was always just really fascinated with what was living in my own backyard. Once I started scuba diving, I really decided I needed to keep studying marine biology. I was fascinated with the science of marine ecology, but also the science of conservation biology. And so as I was falling in love with coral reefs, I was also becoming heartbroken to learn how threatened they are by human activities and especially climate change. In 2007, when I was in college, I studied for a semester at James Cook University up in Townsville, Australia. And I was doing fieldwork on the Great Barrier Reef, studying coral reef and reef fish ecology, and doing a little bit of sculpting on the side, but my main focus was really to dive in, literally, and learn everything I could about the Great Barrier Reef. And then I talked about it for the next 9 years. And right after I got back from Australia and finished my senior year in college, my boyfriend, we met, and the first thing I told him was how cool the Great Barrier Reef was. And we were dating and then eventually got married, and I 9 years later wanted to take him to Australia to see the reefs that I had fallen in love with. It just happened to be the same time as one of the biggest coral bleaching events in the history of the Great Barrier Reef. Warming sea temperatures in particular often cause coral bleaching. It happens really quickly, so that's something that I had never seen before. And I don't want to say I was lucky to see it, but in a way it was fortunate that I actually saw such extensive coral bleaching. I remember kind of looking over, and all of a sudden just the staghorn corals, for as far as I could see, were ghostly white, just completely white. And so that way of emotionally kind of getting hit over the head with how much these reefs were in trouble really motivated me to refocus and start communicating it more than ever. I realized that I could impact people's emotions by creating artwork that celebrated the beauty and fragility of coral reefs. A lot of the work I do has a sense of motion that transfers between individual pieces in the installation. So a lot of times I'll start from the center and work my way out. Once I come up with a design, I create a gigantic template that's full scale on the floor of my studio. So to do that, I use Photoshop and I put my hand-drawn sketch into kind of a digitized format and figure out exactly the measurements of every single piece. A lot of times my installations can have hundreds or even thousands of pieces in them. I use a couple different clay bodies to create my work. There's a stoneware clay that I use, and then I also use some elements that I create out of porcelain and then stick into my work as I'm building. The fragility of a coral reef in the wild I find really similar to the fragility of porcelain anemone tentacles or stoneware coral branches. That sense of fragility is really fundamental to the message of my work. I think it's an interesting concept that people really want to touch the textures in my work, especially some of the most fragile ones, but if they do, they risk breaking it, and that's the same as if you're exploring a coral reef, because if you touch a coral, you can kill it instantly. The actual building process for me, I'm pretty quick. I do all the building for the most part myself, and I don't use any molds, so I freeform build everything by hand. So every single piece is one of a kind. I use all kinds of different tools to texture my work. I think one of the most beautiful things about a coral reef is the diversity of different forms and textures that are involved in kind of creating this coalescing of different species. So I'm constantly inventing new tools to make different textures. For example, I have like dental tools and some of the dissection tools that I used as a marine biology student. I spend hours just sitting here poking thousands of holes with chopsticks and paintbrushes and toothpicks and whatever I can get my hands on. A lot of my work shows the transition from really healthy, colorful, vibrant coral reefs transitioning into coral bleaching and showing that contrast. Corals can actually recover from bleaching. They usually die from it, but there is that possibility, and so that's something that I explore in my work as well. I think coral bleaching is a really stark way to visualize climate change. Coral reefs are beautiful when they're healthy and colorful and vibrant, but there's something also hauntingly beautiful about a bleached coral reef that we find interesting to look at. I think art is really powerful in communicating environmental issues. Art can shape how we view the world and our relationship to it. I really hope that people seeing my work feel the way I do when I'm hovering over a coral reef in the wild. I hope that my work sparks a sense of curiosity in viewers and makes them want to learn about how coral reefs are important to them, and maybe that's sparked by them wondering why I would make such gigantic installations and why coral reefs are so important to me to begin with. So few people get the chance to really put their faces underwater and explore down at eye level with these marine creatures. And I think it's a really amazing way to feel like you're part of this incredible planet that is ocean-based. Like over 70% of the world is ocean. And as humans, we know so little of it.
Mitochondria is really a celebration of understanding our roots and answering the question, what do we owe each other on a warming planet? In writing Mitochondria, a lot of our inspiration came from the understanding that our elders held so much knowledge, and in the natural world, that couldn't be more true.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. Welcome to Lil Idley's Mitochondria EPA release show. It's a show, but really it's a party. So tonight you're gonna hear a lot of music about roots and about cells, about ecosystems, and we hope it's as healing as it is fun.
My name is Ranjini Prabhakar. I live in Washington, D.C. I am an environmental advocate and a musician. Over time, it's made sense to me that my life as an artist and my life as an advocate are two parts of me that really exist as one. I am in a band called Lil Idley. It's myself and my partner who started this band in 2020, right when the pandemic hit. One thing we really allow ourselves is to not crowd each other in the studio. We actually take turns coming down here and tinkering with sounds.
A lot of it is asynchronous, the way we work. A lot of time is also spent on just discussing ideas about a song. So even before we come down to the studio space, we are talking about it. We are thinking about the soundscapes. I think about it as negotiation and seeing like, what do we want to do individually, but eventually we are still interested in serving the song.
We have put out a number of singles and music videos, but we just released our first 5-song EP called Mitochondria. My first memories of singing and being connected to music come directly from my grandmother. My grandmother was a singer as well, and when I was younger, about 3 or 4, she would line up all of us cousins and she would teach us songs that were part of the South Indian Carnatic repertoire, which was very close to the traditions of my family.
As a fun show and tell, I've actually brought my very own mitochondria with me tonight, and that is my mom. So let's give my mom a round of applause. Thanks for giving birth to me, Mom. It's been a blast.
I think my mom was always the first to remind me that if you have an artistic spirit, it's a gift, and it's a gift that's meant to be shared in any way that feels right to you. I think a lot of my job is really about being able to tell stories. I work for an organization called Earth Justice. They are the largest nonprofit environmental legal advocacy organization in the country. We are living in the time of climate change. Climate impacts have been felt by marginalized communities across the country for decades already. These are Black and brown communities, low-income communities who are experiencing the effects of climate change first and the worst. One of the privileges of my job is getting to interact with these communities, understand their stories, share in their pain, and bring all of that to their members of Congress who may at times be able to intellectualize the issues of climate change, but need help in understanding how to actually make decisions that would change so many people's lives for the better.
So y'all are at the greatest protest in town. Sometimes life in DC does feel like one big protest.
Everything I've learned about the ethos around ecological justice, I've learned outside of the halls of Congress.
But we just wanted our music to remind people that we together connected in this space are so powerful, and collectively we can disrupt what on the surface seems to be impenetrable or permanent, and it's not. Permanence is not in the room with us tonight.
There's a sense of decorum and language that's very specific to Congress that doesn't seem very natural outside of it. And as an artist, the most beautiful thing is being completely limitless when it comes to language.
'Cause the earth is allergic to you. Without
I originally wrote Allergic as a love song. It was a song about heartbreak. But the more I got closer to the climate community, the more that song started to take on different meaning to me. And something that I've learned through the years, just being deeper into environmental movement work, is this idea of reciprocity. The way that we treat ourselves and each other is directly mirrored in how we treat the earth. When it comes to love and heartbreak and relationships, often themes found in pop songwriting, what does it mean to experience those things in relationship to the land and the soil and to nature? And what happens when those relationships are broken?
So why can't you just let the earth be?
In dealing with climate anxiety and grief, a lot of that comes from the fact that we're building systems that take us so far away from nature. What we're told by nature is that we are all interconnected. We are all part of one big whole, and human beings absolutely fit into that equation. In understanding mycelium, which are fibers in the soil from fungi that help trees communicate with each other, and how mushrooms and plants and trees are actually part of one larger ecosystem. We too belong to that. And that was an inspiration for a song that we wrote where the chorus sings, "I'm all of you, just not any you know." It sort of had us thinking about how I don't need to know someone. I don't need to know their entire story. I don't even need to love them or like them to understand that we are all part of the same being. We don't have to look the same or eat the same food or speak the same language. We are really all parts of each other. And that was really in taking inspiration from the wisdom that I found delving deeper into nature.
Deepa Coconut on the drums, everybody.
I tell people all the time that I think imagination is our most powerful political tool. And I think it is actively suppressed by the structures and the society that we live in a lot of the time. Many people who should have access to play and imagination are systemically prevented from having access to those things, and that is directly connected to people's ability to dream about and advocate for a better life and a better future for themselves. My name is Lanny Fu. I am one of the co-directors of Superhero Clubhouse. Superhero Clubhouse is a creative community of people making art, making performances in theater centered around climate and environmental justice. It feels incredibly important to have the voices of young people present in any conversation about climate crisis because young people are very much on the front lines of those impacts. We are at the LMCC Art Center on Governor's Island. It's a beautiful space, beautiful island. Today is our dress rehearsal for our Big Green Theater show, Too New Drowsy, a Fairy Tale. It was written by Harbor School students over on the island who got together with a group of adults, professional collaborators, and are putting up a show this weekend.
We can take my watercraft. I'm one of the adult actors, or the elder actors is how we refer to ourselves in the room. I'll be playing Trash, the rebel artist, among other characters. It's been so great to work with the students here at the Harbor School. They're so excited, they're so enthusiastic, like the amount of big risk choices that they're taking is really inspiring as an actor working in a professional context too, off the wall choices. Too New Drowsy begins on the ferry in New York City Harbor. It follows a ferry worker and various commuters on the ferry, including students who are now in kind of like a half cyborg, half human existence in this future world.
The students created the characters, and then from there we found the story of the rats and began to write this play about some rats trying to find a home in the face of climate catastrophe.
If only you fools knew, the real generator is powered by my phone. My name is Draco McCall. I am playing Luke in To New Drowsy. I was actually shown it by one of my close friends, Damien. Pretty cool dude, and I wanted to join from the beginning because I love theater and I've been in theater programs my entire life.
Close the gates, we have to leave.
Wait, there's still people in the street.
We were last working on heading to Big Tech Big Bros headquarters to take down the evil villain Luke, who is trying to turn New York City into a underwater amusement park.
Not on my watch! We did a couple of puppet workshops with the students who had never puppeteered before. I gave them a chance just to put on the puppet, just to get comfortable with the feeling of it on their hands.
Maybe we just need to accept our fate.
Let's hug! Something else we would do is give them prompts. What does the rat look like when he's sad? What does the rat look like when he's happy? How does the rat swim? How does the rat laugh? How does the rat dance?
I would try to interpret the mood of what's going on in the story and apply that to my puppet. So like, if I'm shocked, I'm just gonna have like Mike's jaw just drop.
Something that struck me working with high school students on a play about climate change was how much of a challenge it was to get them to think more hopeful and more imaginative. The world we live in is frustrating and sad, and their anger and disappointment is valid. Part of Big Green Theater is how can we imagine solutions?
Climate is like, I guess, a very important topic. Since I go to Harvard School, it's like a lot of the lessons are on that type of thing. We learn about like how these rising sea levels are affecting us, especially like Governor's Island and Manhattan.
In Lower Manhattan, the biggest climate impact that we're facing is really flooding. Past flooding that's happened because of major storm events, and also future flooding that is sure to become worse and worse as the years go on. We try very hard to approach each of our programs and productions with a circular design process. So really thinking intentionally about where the resources that we bring in come from. Can they be mostly recycled, reused, borrowed, and then where do they go? But I think that the vision we have for our work is much more holistic than that. The vision we have for our work is very much about building new systemic relationships that foster more possibility for justice and more possibility for regenerative ways of being together. So the material sustainability piece is very important because that is our relationship to resources, and it's our relationship to the more than human world around us. And I would say also that we actively model our organization and our core members and everyone who works with us as a thriving ecosystem. And when you think of it and frame it that way, what does that mean? What does that mean in terms of how people can come in and out of projects, or how we work together and how we support each other, what we give and take?
We're not taking this academic or clinical approach that is kind of removed. We're very much trying to learn from each other's experiences and the experiences of those that have been dealing with this firsthand on the front line.
We do a lot of intergenerational work. Part of what we feel that we do really specifically is build bridges across different kinds of communities that are often siloed from each other. The Living Stage is another project that took place in the Lower East Side. The goal was to build a community garden that doubled as a performance space. And through the process of building that, really activate different people engaging with this very underutilized brown space. We worked with an ensemble of seniors, along with some students from a nearby school, to create an original performance that was then showcased at this festival that also invited local artists and the seniors from the senior center and anyone who wanted to come in the neighborhood to come and celebrate the space.
When you start to work on stories that are involving climate, it becomes very zoned in on place. The work that Superhero Clubhouse does requires of their audience to go to a place. It is interactive. It is being in that environment.
There Will Be Monsters is a hybrid theater and gaming experience. So participants are invited to play a character within a magical version of our reality that mirrors some of the different climate crises we're facing now.
I play the Dungeon Master. So it is set up like a Dungeons and Dragons kind of tabletop RPG or role-playing game. We're starting to focus in on the bioregion of the Hudson Valley, so all the way from New York City up through the Hudson River into upstate New York. We're still working on how to incorporate the flora and fauna that are specific to that area.
It's just amazing what people come up with. Oftentimes storytelling is what shows us what's possible.
I always say that each new piece or each new project is, we're building a new world, and we get to decide how that world functions, and we get to decide what's in it, and how we want to live in it, and how we want to live with each other in it. Repeat after me, we're going to say this 3 times, okay? I will lift you up, I will not let you fall.
I will lift you up, I will not let you fall.
I will lift you up, I will not let you fall.
I will lift you up, I will not let you fall.
I will lift you up, I will not let you fall.
I will lift you up, I will not let you fall.
There's something about opening up a playful space and opening up an imaginative space that makes it possible to be more hopeful and activated.
I hope people really enjoy it and find the entire thing to be funny and humorous, because that was the main point. But I also hope people realize, oh, climate change is not going to be something that hits us in an instant. It's going to be a slow, gradual progression that slowly makes things worse and worse if nothing gets changed.
I hope that our viewers of our play want to see and want to help make the world a better place, so that our play doesn't become a reality.
They're gonna look at the message and probably, hopefully, they'll act on it, because like, this is our world, we have to take care of it, you know?
I think I was surprised by my students' ability to find some hope in the midst of our current climate crisis. I'm a parent, I have 2 young kids. And I don't always feel a lot of hope. So I feel a lot of gratitude for the ways the students can think creatively about how to keep thriving together. I just hope the students feel so loved inside of it. I think they've created a beautiful and hysterical world, and it's been a joy to bring it to life. So I hope that they get to feel really accomplished and proud of themselves in the work.
There's something really empowering about having a thing that only exists here, or here and with the other brains in the room, and then it's alive and it's something that other people can come and see and touch and feel and be with. It's a real actual experience of like, oh, this thing that didn't exist, that I didn't know if it was possible, now exists. And people are living in it. On a small scale, that is so important, because that's what we're trying to do collectively in the world right now. The things that we're told are impossible, the things that we're told that can't be, actually, we need to figure out a way to be able to imagine them and like envision them so that they can be.